I like Mark's picture.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience this morning. Welcome to Connect with Katharine. I'm Missy Rubin from the Public Relations Department. Today, we're talking with CEO Katharine Kellerman. So welcome, Katharine. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's participating today.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for your patience. And Mark, I love that picture of a boat. I want to go there right now. That looks fabulous. So I'm completely blanking that we had some introductory remarks. I'm so sorry. It's been so long since we've hosted one of these. I'm forgetting how the routine has gone. Just today is just a real quick touch base about where we are, where we're going. This will be on YouTube for folks to check out later. We'd like to get to where we have enough back and forth that we can have these live so we can get questions that are dynamic. But today you can submit questions in advance. I think we have a laundry list of those that we can go through. Some things I know are front of mind for folks. I know we are in contract negotiations and they are going well. So we hope to have a contract wrapped up in the near future. And I hope everyone's having a great summer. So that's how we'll get started.
Okay, great. So I think everyone is really excited about the new brand. Tell me about PRT. How did we come up with the name? What does it mean for employees? What does it mean for riders?
Well, thank you for that question. From some folks I've gotten, wow, this is my fourth new name here. Other folks, why mess with it? When I came here 5 years ago to interview, one thing I was really struck by was we had so many buses. We had so much traffic that was out there. It was fantastic to see that much transit use, but the buses were all different colors. So were they local buses? Were they cross towns? Did they go to different neighborhoods? It didn't make sense. And then the operator shirts were brown, so they didn't match the buses. And then the bus stop sign said bus stop, but not other information. And as I got out on the system, we had different branding at different stations and different branding at some of our park and ride lots. And it was hard to put it all together. And so when we're here for a long time, we know it's Port Authority, but when you're coming to town, what does that mean? So we are, we don't have boats. We hope we have authority, but Port Authority is not the name that captures what we do. What is it that we do? We connect all over this county to get their lives going, to help them get to jobs, to see their friends and family, and that feeds our economy. And Port Authority didn't match up to that. So we started in late 18 going into 19, an awful lot of market research and focus groups, which included some focus groups with operators, a lot of ride-alongs to observe what the daily job was like on bus and on rail, and then a bunch of research of what did folks really want from service. And, it's not really a surprise. It's kind of a back to basics thing, just like PRT, Pittsburgh Regional Transit, is back to basics. Folks didn't want Uber or glitter or self-driving vehicles. They wanted respectful, reliable, clean, and courteous. They wanted to know where they were going. They wanted to be able to walk out and just see their vehicle and know that's the bus that I'm going to get on. And as we've seen through the last 2 years, that's really what we do. We are not glitter and Uber and AV, and we don't need to be, and we shouldn't try, because we have over 100,000 trips a day on the service that we already run. So this is going to Pittsburgh Regional Transit really is getting us back to basics. It's unifying how all of our vehicles will look. It opens the door for better bus stop signage. So imagine a QR code that gives you real-time information, and just this consistent footprint going forward that really shows that we're focusing on the real bread and butter issues that we know that our passengers wanted to see. And, let's be honest, is 2022 the time to do this, right? We've had a pandemic. I think a lot of us are still, bruised and beaten up over the past months with a vaccine mandate. So why now? The answer is, how long do you wait? How far do we get after a pandemic or something else going on before we move ahead with what we're doing after the pandemic? Folks are still wearing masks, folks are still getting sick, but that real slug of time where folks had hunkered down and we were running reduced service, that's behind us. And I don't know about you, I can't tread water forever. I have to go in a direction. And we are, we've proven that we can survive that pandemic, and it's time to move forward with a clean name and a clean look and get focused on our big long range plans that we have.
Thank you. That's great. One question I want to ask, because there was some concern over this. Will the name change impact funding?
It will not. So we legally remain the Port Authority of Allegheny County, but we are doing business as DBA, Pittsburgh Regional Transit. This is a pretty common convention. So a lot of transit agents or not necessarily like a nonprofit, but public entities will be created under statute with a very technical name. And as they move forward, they will brand to a name which is easier to type in for an internet or to have a name that makes more sense for the core business. So this doesn't jeopardize our funding. So we're still the good old Port Authority, but doing business as Pittsburgh Regional Transit.
Great. That is really good to know. The last 2 years have been tough, as you touched on already. Why was it important to announce the rebrand now?
Yeah, that is a good question. It's, at some point we had made the commitment early in 18 and going into, once we saw what was coming, what was coming back up, and once we had a good sense of what names made sense for folks through our market research and testing it out, that we were going to proceed in a way where we could roll this name out and be separate from, conversations on Act 89 financing, or separate from future conversations about maybe more taxpayer investment in transportation. And we didn't want it to be muddled up. So we would have loved to have done the name change in 2020. Clearly, we were busy with other things. We had a lot of other stuff going on. But if we're going to, for lack of a better expression, clean up the look and the feel, this is a perfect time to do it. We know folks aren't taking transit as much to go to work, right? I mean, that's just the way that the world has moved. We also know folks aren't going as often to the grocery store, because if you can get your groceries delivered, you're probably still doing that. We know folks aren't going to as many doctor's appointments. So we know that our growth going forward isn't just going to be being more helpful for the folks who are using us. That's always our core market. It's getting folks who maybe gave us a try in the past and changed their mind, getting folks who haven't taken transit at all, getting them to come on board. And it is just much easier to figure out what to do when something says transit in the name, or Pittsburgh Regional Transit. Other things to consider when you're standing on a street corner and you're trying to get the website information, portauthority.org is an awful lot to type in, and can we do something that's more user-friendly standing there on the corner. Now, one point I do want to stress, when we say regional, we are talking about the fact that Pittsburgh feels like a region. It's Pittsburgh, it's Allegheny County. We know we have friends in the neighboring counties who come in on transit. They don't make stops, but they come into downtown. So when we talk about Pittsburgh, I don't live my life where I stop at a county line. I don't think many of us do. We really are a region, and we can definitely do better if, for this region. For instance, if I'm going to another county, I'm going to have to transfer in downtown and then take a nonstop bus out to that county, and I'm going to have to pay 2 fares. And objectively, regardless of who's running it, we can do better than that. There's got to be something that's more customer friendly and easier for them to use.
Sure. Let's talk about ridership.
Oh, yeah.
Pre-pandemic numbers versus where we are today.
Great. So pre-pandemic, 2019, fiscal 2019 was our best ridership year in decades. We closed out at about 220 to 230,000 trips per day. That's combining bus and rail. Rail was about 25,000 trips a day, and bus was over 200,000. Right now, we're at about 110,000 on bus, and then we have anywhere from 6,000 to 9,000 on rail. Incline previously would range from 1,500 to 3,000, and it's still in that 1,000 to 2,000 range. So overall, we're at about 60% of what our ridership was pre-pandemic. Again, folks are not coming in every single day to go to really heavily populated work areas. Downtown pre-pandemic had 110,000 jobs and 44,000 parking. 3 times as many people coming to work as could park. Right now, if half the employers have come back, regardless of the job you're doing, it might be easier to get into a parking place that you can afford. Or you may have just different schedule flexibilities. We know a lot of schools were on remote schedules. So that universe has been a little bit different, but we are seeing ridership come back. An incidental thing is in 2019, we were the 25th biggest transit agency in the country based on ridership, 15th biggest bus agency. So we're definitely, remember, we are a national leader, especially when it comes to bus transportation. And right now we're number 20 because we've passed some of our peers whose rebound has not been as strong as ours has. Now, interesting, when we look across the country, a lot of places that have brought their ridership back were places that didn't have the kind of frequency and the coverage network that we do, by which I mean buses that run every 5 minutes throughout the day, or a busway service or light rail. And that feels counterintuitive. It feels like if our friends have a bus running once every hour, once every half hour, and we have so much more service that more folks should be coming back to our service. And what we see nationally is when somebody's on a bus only once an hour, many times they don't have any other way to get around, and they're not in jobs where they were able to work from home. So when we see some other places that maybe have been constant on their ridership, it's because they were not as attractive in the first place. And we're seeing, different parts of the country catch up in different ways. At one point, San Francisco was saying they didn't think their rail ridership would come back till 2031. We do see places that go to free fares, and that brings ridership back. But when they discontinue their free fares, they go back to where they were. So yes, it makes it easier for folks to ride the bus, but as far as building longer term ridership, we're not seeing that yet. We in January introduced some changes to our fare structure. All of them were designed to make it easier for folks to pay, but a lot of these were also built to make sure that folks who used to ride us maybe 5 to 7 days a week and now ride 3 days a week could still have a fare media that made sense to them. Or if somebody's just doing a bunch of trips in a day, they could tap their card and they could ride around for 3 hours. Right now, all of that is tied to being able to have an online fare card or a Connect card. But by the end of the year, we hope we've introduced some stuff that gets those benefits for folks who are paying cash and expands our fare network. Again, just to make it easier for folks to get that fare media so it's easier for them to ride.
Okay. We know that hiring has been a challenge. Can you talk about what we're doing to address the hiring challenge and how we're better aligning our sort of operator staffing levels versus service?
Right. So, wow, there's a lot to go through there. The folks with an ops background will be familiar, but you can't scale bus and rail operations like they're driving them, right? If we need 10 maintenance folks and somebody has appendicitis, God forbid, 9 can often cover that work. But if we need to drive 10 buses, one of the operators has appendicitis, that bus does not go out. So we have an extra board, which is essentially sort of rotating group of folks who fill in for vacations, they fill in for appendicitis, they fill in for any reason. And we have a contract where we don't require overtime, but there's a lot out there. And we're very fortunate, and the Port Authority folks really will volunteer and step up and pick up that extra work. What that means for work is over the previous years, we've had a smaller extra board than would have been necessary. I don't know if that makes sense. Let me think of a better way to put that. The industry standard is to have a 20% extra board. So for all the operators you need, add another 20% on top. Now, what that means is not out of 100, you take 20, so it's 80 and 20. It's you've got 100 pieces of work and then 20 folks are available to cover it at any given time. We have been anywhere from 11 to 14% instead of 20. And it's been through the hard work of our folks, stepping up, working through dispatch, that we've been able to cover that. Well, that only gets you so far. So like November of 2020, we did a service modification to match up what we ran versus what we knew we could run. So we schedule 100 trips a day and we can only make 97, for instance. At some point, just build 97 and figure out what to do to fill those other 3 trips. It was challenging to hire in 2020. We had a lockdown for a while where we weren't running classes. And then when we brought classes back, it was 4 people at the most. And our normal hiring needs, when we look at retirements and people taking other jobs, it's probably closer to 24 people a class. Starting in 2020, we were behind. And now as we're trying to catch up, we're running into the Great Resignation. Or a better way to put it is, this is, you guys know, we ladies know, this is not the easiest job. And if we bring you on in a training rate that's the same as, working at Chipotle, how do we make the sell that getting to the end of training and then getting to $21.94 an hour plus the benefits is worth it? If you have to support your family, you think you're going to be making 44 a year, you're making 30 grand a year for 10 weeks, that can be problematic, right? Now, these are fantastic jobs and we have excellent benefits. We have a pretty quick progression. You can move on into first line supervision. There's so many things you can do from these positions, but it's just challenging everywhere we go. So what have we done? Starting in June, we drew down about 4% of our service because we were missing 4% of our trips every day. We drew down the runs by 6% to make it a little easier to fill. I want to clarify, before the mandate went into place, we were already missing 1 to 2%. So starting, back in 2021, we were missing 1 to 2%. So definitely when the mandate went into place, we were dropping 15 to 20% in that immediate window after that. But even if we had not done that mandate, we would still have been doing a service modification in June because we knew we weren't catching those trips. And what we've also found is that 1 to 2% it's okay, but at some point the folks who've been volunteering to do overtime every day, they're done volunteering. And then we're calling people up while they're working. We're requiring them when we're extending their day. And then that leads to burnout too. So what are ways to cover that? In addition to taking down the number of trips by 4%, we're working on expanding the extra board to getting it to stabilize at 14% and then to 17% and then to 20%. So once we have that extra board built up and we know we can cover trips, we will be adding service back in. I want to highlight that this year's budget has the exact same number of operator positions and it has a pretty similar number of hours of service we want to run. So this is not a situation of, well, we're going to cut this back and then we won't have folks, and we'll cut this back, we won't have folks. We know we have unmet demand from service cuts back from 2007. We still have folks walking 2 miles to get to bus stops. We have social security centers and hospitals opening up further and further out the county. And how do we get out there? We're certainly not going to get there if we're not adding more service. But if the service we have today, we can't guarantee it's going to run, that's where we need to focus first. If you are in customer service or you're driving a vehicle, you have borne the brunt of this. You deserve better than that. So as we start stabilizing and getting more folks in, we can add service. So what are some of the things we've been doing? We pushed out a really big social media hiring campaign. We've been working with a lot of our elected officials because many people have the impression that you need to have your CDL before you come here, and that's not the case. We'll get you your CDL. So with a lot of our representatives and state senators, we pushed hiring information out to their offices. And so when folks talk to them about, hey, who's hiring, what's going on, we refer them, they get referred over to us. We've really expanded the number of job fairs that we're going to, and we've been streamlining that process. So instead of just getting contact information, we can get more done at the job fair so we can narrow down that window. If you're feeling the pressure because your coworker is not able to cover work, you don't care what I say. I understand that. But it is a national issue, and I think we have good tools to get ahead of it, knocking on what I hope is actual wood.
So you touched on this a little bit, but the board approved a new budget last month.
Right.
What changes should we expect?
So the budget for this upcoming fiscal year is 5% over last year, and the capital budget is 6% over as well. I want to stress there are no layoffs, and there are no planned service reductions for like taking service out other than where we're talking about matching up to the manpower that we have. So we continue to be in a position where folks, buy that home, do those things, make your life is still there for you. And I'm really proud that when we went through the pandemic, we didn't lay anybody off and we were able to keep everybody on the schedule. That was important to make sure we could do that. What you'll see coming up through this next budget is the investments that we make are going to start to be filtered through a strategic plan, which we'll talk about in a little bit, laying out what's important to us. So in the pandemic, we did our very first, our first ever long range capital and, service plan. We've done smaller ones previously or partnered with folks, but we finished a document called Next Transit, which is a 25-year service plan. And I'm glad we did it during the pandemic, because if we had done it beforehand, it wouldn't be useful. The world before March 13th, 2020, it just doesn't exist anymore. It's not coming back. It's, we're in this different kind of world where people use service differently and live their lives differently. So I'm really glad that we did so much work on this document during the pandemic. And this Next Transit lays out 10 major corridors and projects for us to work on over the next 25 years. It's a $4 billion investment. That's a big number. We're already behind the 8 ball in that we don't have enough capital to come in to match up for the needs that we have. So part of a call to action on Next Transit is how do we maximize federal funding under the Federal Infrastructure Act, the IIJA. How do we get more investments? So out of that $4 billion, probably $800 million would be local over 20 to 25 year plan. how do we get that kind of money? But it also shows us where we can go for the future, better connections, a fifth bus garage, maybe hydrogen batteries for our electric buses. But if we don't have the plan of what are you going to do to get to those things, it's never going to happen. So the strategic plan that we're sharing with our board next week in one of our committees is built around how do you take everything you need to do 25 years out and break it into 5-year buckets so you know you're going to get those things done. And the budget filters a lot more through that. So we identify, customer excellence, employee excellence, service excellence, financial excellence, for instance. And if those are our priorities, where are we investing? Are we investing in refresher training, maybe every 2 years, making sure every operator and every maintenance person can come in and get a day where we talk about what's changed and some other connections. Maybe it's introducing more community investment to look at where our investments in service haven't been really equitable, but also what are other organizations we can support to have a stronger Pittsburgh? How do we support smaller businesses? So you'll start seeing that filter through on more of the budgets too. Capitalize, I almost forgot. We did not order any buses last year. We saved up. So this year we're getting in 107 Arctics. So get ready for some new blue articulated buses.
Yes. What does the future hold for PRT?
Oh my goodness. So caveating that the world is crazy right now and things are moving around. We constantly hear from folks they want more service, whether they want it later at night, more frequent during the day. They want more information out at their stations, so it's easier for them to navigate the system. We hear that internally too. So we hear from folks trying to use benefits information that they'd really just want like an interactive voice system where they can get plugged into where they need to go. We have excellent employees who've been here a long time, and we hear from them that they're looking for their next opportunity, ideally internally. But how do we grow that workforce? Those are some of the things we have. So what the future holds is we're going to keep going big. Make no small plans. It's hard to get people excited about them. And we've seen what happens to our city and our region when this transit agency decides to stay small. We know that ends up being a spiral. We nip and we tuck and we nip and we tuck and we don't paint and we don't invest. And then you don't get that back. So the future for PRT is coming out of the blocks to continue to invest in our service, to expand our capital investment, to improve the quality of the assets that we already have, to increase our investment in the folks who've been working here, whether you've been here 3 weeks or 5 years or 34 years, to keep investing to make sure we have folks who have the tools that they need, but who also have opportunities to move into different areas here if they want to. If somebody wants to move to a different organization, I hate that you're leaving, but I love that you gave us the good growth time to build up to that next platform. And we will always love you and save a spot for you. But so the future for PRT is it's continuing to invest in our riders and our employees in our region and continuing to grow because, Allegheny County is finally growing after decades and decades. And we need to be able to rise to that challenge.
Yes. You're leaning in towards it, but one final item to ask about is the strategic plan. And what should we expect from this strategic plan?
Oh my goodness, so that is a really great question. So the strategic plan, again, next Thursday, we're taking a high-level overview to one of our board committees, and not a big presentation, but just why we're doing this, what it's going to look like. We always want to make sure the board gets information before we tease it out to everybody else, but look for some internal, maybe emails or other communication to share with you before it's going live. We don't want you to see something in the PG when it's something coming from your agency. If you were here in 2018, you might remember the tactical plan where the chiefs working with directors had built together, like what are some goals we can have, better customer service, improving our IT investment, financial stability. And we built goals from there. That was a 12 to 15 month document. And we got the stuff done right before the pandemic hit. So this will be a larger version of that. So what folks can look forward to internally is a rollout. Now, this is something that the board isn't approving because they are our priorities here. They're what the senior team and the directors and the managers and everyone else, what we're saying we're going to do to deliver these big documents. We have a revised and improved mission and vision, focusing more on being not just connecting people to life, but why do we do that? We we're connecting you to what you want to do because we're helping grow our economy and invest locally. So look for us to capture that. We're also introducing values. It'll be the first time that we've had corporate values. If you've been at other agencies in the past 10 years, you may have seen those. So look for this information to come out at your workplaces. Look for a kickoff event where we can get folks together to walk through and what does it mean for you. The strategic plan for non-bargaining folks should start forming the foundation of the annual reviews. And why is that important? Everything we do here should be focused on, investing in our communities, investing in our employees, and getting the absolute best service out there that we can in building that foundation. We should be able to draw that line between any task that we're doing and getting there. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to pop into your workstation and be like, hey, what are you doing for the vision today? I mean, that's not the point, but there are some things we do, which we love to do, and they're great investments, but they might not be the best choice of our efforts now to row us into the direction we want for the next 3 to 5 years. So part of that is making sure that the things that we are doing or that we're holding each other accountable for further us on those goals. This will also enable us to introduce some online dashboards. So we will be able to log on, whether in our public or private websites, and look at how is customer satisfaction going? How's our process on getting to different levels of reserves? What do our safety documents look like? Safety isn't just something that we do when we're out there driving a 30 or 45 or 100,000 pound vehicle. Safety should be embedded in everything that we do at the agency, and how are we capturing that, right? So that'll be the rollout. We'll start coming up with, seeing the new vision and mission, seeing the values, and then working within your work groups to make sure that your evaluation includes this, but also building the work plans so we can see who has to be involved in what tasks so we can get to this future. What is it? A goal without a plan is just a dream, something like that. And we want to make sure that we're concrete in how we can get to these improvements for everybody.
Great.
Did we walk through everything? Oh my
We got through everything. Was there anything you
Hey.
wanted to talk about?
No, you know what? We've got those 2 things. So I see we have the goals. I have a copy of them here. So here's the goals we're talking about: collaboration, customer service, equity, flexibility, safety, of course, and integrity. Collaboration, and that there's very few things we do that don't touch other departments, and we are not successful when we don't branch out across them. For instance, right now, Kelsey Shannon, the Director of Business and Corporate Relations, is leading a process to pull together all the tasks that go on with changing schedules, starting from when the planners come up with an idea to when we pull bus stops. And every single department of this agency is involved in that process, whether it is finance, making sure we have the funding for the appropriate number of operators next year, or the sign shop quite clearly, or the communications group and getting service change information out. Every single department's involved. And so we're not going to be successful if we're not collaborating. I think customer service is self-explanatory, because if we don't have customers, we don't have jobs, internal and external. We are all serving somebody else. We've learned in the past few years, we really have to be flexible, and it can be hard, especially when we've done something for 28 or 40 years, to let go of what we've done. But if we don't let go of who we used to be, we're not going to make room for who we need to become, right? It's like if you're on those monkey bars, and if you don't let go of that back monkey bar, you're not going to get there. So flexibility has been crucial to us being able to be successful in the past couple of years. Safety, of course, should be woven into everything we do. And I want to wrap up talking about equity and integrity. Equity, is kind of a buzzword. I think it's taken on new conversations post 2020, post George Floyd, and the summer Black Lives Matters. But if we only talk about something in the summer of 2020, we're going to be back here in 2028 and 2037 and 2045 having the same conversations. Port Authority, oh my goodness, Pittsburgh Regional, we're a big employer. We have 2,600 employees. We have a $500,000 budget. We are uniquely positioned to make sure that we can walk this walk. So are we looking at how our service impacts different neighborhoods? Are we looking at barriers for smaller businesses, for instance? There are, it is a statement of fact that female-owned businesses have access to less capital because women walking into businesses usually have a shorter business tenure or a different professional network. So if we know right out the gate that a female-owned business might not have as much access to advertising or help writing a proposal, how are we going to invest to make sure that those things are balanced so that doesn't just get perpetuated generation after generation, right? We also know folks have some really deep-seated ideas that they bring from home and they bring them to the workplace. And if you come to work when you're 20 or 22, your workplace isn't having conversations with you about how the world outside work is changing. You're not going to have them. We just don't do that. We watch the news, we play bunco, but we don't have those conversations. And so where does an employer, what role does PRT have in making sure we're having those conversations? Plus, ideas of equity change. So, in the 90s, ideas of equity were really centered on, affirmative action and making sure that barriers for Black Americans to participate were getting removed and then, or at least addressed. And we didn't get those addressed by the time that immigration conversations started popping up, and then talking about broader inclusion for folks who were marrying gay partners or were transitioning. I mean, the idea of equity is that folks get treated like fully human beings. That's pretty basic, right? And we need to be walking in that. And that takes me to integrity. I can't tell you to trust me. I either earn that or I don't. I can't tell you to believe me. I either earn that or I don't. But one thing I always think about is, if I've made a big decision, would my grandmother be proud of me, right? Or would she come back out of her grave, slap me, and go right back down? And if we aren't living with integrity, then we're not building these teams and we're not taking forward all the other values that we have. So to collaboration, customer service, equity, flexibility, integrity, and safety are the big values. And the final thing I'll close on is, it's been a crazy, goodness gracious, 3 years. And I think we're all done saying, let's get to next year because next year will be crazier. It can be really stressful to read the news. I know a lot of times we talk to our operations folks, frontline folks, and say, be kind to another passenger because you might be the only nice person that they see all day. You might be the only thing that they experience that's good. We need to acknowledge that for our own staff, that's the case as well. And it's a lot to bear out there. And we are committed to making sure that whatever is going on in the bigger, wider world, that every member of this team is valued for who they are, is included for who they are, and has an opportunity to do their job without the outside stresses weighing in on them. So we want to make sure we have that commitment too. And I think that concludes my rambling. So thank you for joining us today, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Katharine.
Thank you, Missy.
And this will be on YouTube. So if you joined us late and you missed the beginning or vice versa, we will be posting it on our YouTube channel so you can watch it in its entirety. Thank you so much for participating today.